Hello, this is Brianna Haynes, and for my transmediation assignment, I'll be discussing the stages of online learning. There are many roadblocks and resistance in online learning. So during my research, I read about many of the roadblocks and the resistance in online learning. Just being introduced to it, especially if you were a teacher who came into your classroom teaching face to face, or if you're like me and your first year you started teaching face to face and then it was converted to online learning. It was a big change, honestly, from being taught a certain way, you knowing how you want to run your classroom during your first year. It was a lot. So I had a lot of resistance with online learning because I wanted to teach my students face to face. We're going to talk about the stages of online learning, as I said before. So stage one is the awareness of online learning, and that's just what it is. It's just getting aware and familiar with the online setting. Um, Being aware of what actually online learning is, what blended learning is. And in this stage, a lot of resistance does happen. Your awareness for what online learning is does increase because you're learning about what it actually is. But this is where the resistance begins to happen, it can happen as well. The resistance can begin to happen because you have your teachers, or you have like me who have been teaching online, and then in 2020 all of a sudden we're all sitting home and we're all like, okay, they're like, you need to learn how to teach in an online setting. You need to learn how to take everything that you've taught in your classroom, all of your favorite activity, they need to be converted online. And this is just them being aware. They're not showing them how to do it. It's just everything has to go online. So that was frustrating. So this is a stage one of online learning. Stage two is where the resistance comes in. At this stage, many teachers may have tested it and they may have just given up significantly, significantly. They're like, okay, I do this face to face. Let me try to convert it onto online. Okay, let me use PowerPoint. PowerPoint's not working for me. They're coming in with so many just bumps in the road when it comes to it. And the first thing is like, I don't like this. I want to go back to my face to face online teaching. That's this stage. Step three, we understand the online learning possibilities. This is where you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, they're understanding it, and it's becoming successful. I would say personally that this step came to me after I actually did the content for my online learning class, and I taught it to my students online, and they were very receptive from it. So this is where I was like, okay, this is where I became more accepting of the advantages of teaching with technology, and that's where this step comes in at. This is where also, of course, once something works for you as a fellow educator, I'm always going to my colleagues or my coworkers or people on my grade level and saying, hey, this worked today. Let's try this. I used Seesaw today and my kids really picked up on it. Online learning. I did not have to be in front of them. They picked up on this. So that's where this stage is. You have step four, which is doing the online learning. So um, this is where you start to teach, like I said in the last course, but your students start to actually do. So you might create a test, or you might create an activity that students have to do online, and you're like, okay, they return it, the grades are good. You're like, okay, so they're starting to understand. This is where your interest continues to increase from the last step, and it evolves into partial or complete online instruction. So, last year we had the option to either teach online or face to face in my school district. I kept it online because I felt that it was easier for me and for the children. And with everything going the way that it was going, we're still doing online learning today. So why not just go ahead and just start teaching them that so that they will be prepared for when they get to the upper grades. So this is where it's more engaging and fulfilling to the students and also to the teacher. Then you have step 5 where you're sharing online resources and activities. So this is where, okay, I've taught a lesson, they become receptive to it. I've given an assessment, they did good on the assessment, so they understand the assessment. So now I want to share these online resources and activities. A lot of this happened during the pandemic. Whenever the pandemic happened, everyone didn't know how to use certain online platforms. So what they did was a lot of people use social media as the social media platforms such as Facebook and Instagram to upload videos to help other teachers. That's where this step comes in when you're sharing your online resources and activities. Teachers will make PowerPoints. Teachers would make seesaw lessons and they would just post them on like, hey, if you're in second grade and you're teaching about adjectives this week, here's a PowerPoint that a very interactive PowerPoint that you could like share with your students. All you have to do is just copy this link, put it in your online platform, and share it out to your students. That's where this one comes from. Many educators have come outside of their comfort zone of being in their own classroom, and they spread the word of instructional practices in an online space. So that's what this step was, or step is. And then the last step is advocating the online learning. So once you start sharing your online learning platforms, it starts to work. A lot of people are going to give you feedback on like, hey, that PowerPoint that you made on those agile interactive PowerPoint works so well in my classroom. And I always ask. So if I share something, me personally, I'm always like, hey, let me know what worked. Hey, let me know what didn't work because I want to change it. Because I wanted my lessons to be very diverse, not just for my classroom, but for many classrooms all over. And when you start advocating, this is where the educators um, start to lead the proponents of blending and online learning. You start to inform people about, you know, um, let me tell you about this interactive PowerPoint that I completed. I completed it. I shared it with somebody who stays in Texas, and the lady in Texas, a woman in Texas, said that it worked amazing. Like it was just amazing for her classroom. So let me share this with you. Let my your teacher or my principal had me do a PD on online learning to the school. This is where that step comes in, and this is where the endless possibilities for you can start writing articles if you get magazines, newsletters, on just online learning and how you're advocating on how a positive impact and how easier it can make your classroom become. The summary through it all, when I was reading through the TEC textbook, these steps stuck out to me because it's always relatable and it always makes us feel better. It's heartwarming to know that there are other people going through the same things that you're going through. When online learning was first introduced, of course, like I told you, when the pandemic happened, I was in the classroom for a month. I had been teaching for a month, and I couldn't wait to get in my classroom to teach my students, and then they all disappeared because of the pandemic. So online learning, I had very much resistance to it. Um, but as I learned to gain knowledge about it, and I know I can still have that same relationship, build that same rapport with my students um, online. I mean, that's just what it was at the time, and I had to get used to it. So what I had to do is I had to go through these 6 steps. I found myself at each 6 steps. I remember exactly what I was doing at every step that I went through when I was reading about these steps. And now I would say that I'm in the in between 5 and 6. I haven't wrote any articles or um, given any like PDs through my district, but I have started. I advocate online learning a lot. I'm like, many teachers who I work with, my coworkers were like, I just don't like this, and I'm like, it will make your classroom easier. You don't have to worry about grading any papers. Just create your test online. The computer does it for you. It grades it for you. So like I said in the last sentence on my summary, I would say that I'm in step 5, approaching to step 6, which is really amazing. And I'm going to continue to share these steps that I've learned, even with my principal. Like, hey, we might have teachers who've been teaching for 20 years. You might have a new teacher. I'm going to show her this PowerPoint. Like, hey, these are the steps of online learning. This is what they're going through. It's not just this school. It's not just this district. It's all over the world that they're going through these steps. I'm very grateful for this assignment. It has opened up my mind on just, I mean, the fact that you know like exactly what you were going through and you really don't understand, but is somebody wrote an article about it and each step you can relate to is phenomenal. Thanks and have a good day.